Okay, so I'm John Biggs. I have a degree in foods and nutrition and training in functional medicine, and have had a lot of experience helping out myself and other people with diet, nutrition, different supplementation, and in more of a functional medical approach. And I don't mean to get that confused with modern medicine, but more based on an understanding of what the body functions on and requires, and based on that, what's missing in the picture and filling that in. My story started when I was a cocky 18-year-old, figured I had the world by the tail, and proceeded to have a car accident where I broke both my femurs and severed my urethra and damaged my lungs, and I broke my ribs and punctured my right lung, and broke my shoulder and was in ICU for 10 days and on and on. And so in recovering from that, my recovery spanned 4 years and 17 surgeries, and also it involved bone infection. So I was having dressings with painkillers twice a day. And so you can imagine after 4 years of that, I had a hankering for painkillers. And luckily, I'm keeping this a little bit less detailed than some of the things that went on. But luckily, I was, in the meantime, while this was going on, I spent a lot of time and had money coming in from insurance, so I spent a lot of time actually experimenting with natural vitamins, minerals, herbs, and supplements. And when I was finally back on my feet in 1987, I decided that that's what I was interested in, so I went and did my degree in foods and nutrition, and started in '88. And in 1993, I started Optimum Health so that I could pass on what I'd learned and help people with it. In 2000, studied with the Institute for Functional Medicine, and that really broadened my understanding of how we can actually help people in a real sense, in a day-to-day sense. So often we think being healthy is about living longer. It's actually not. It's about living better today. And I'm talking today. It's just like, what can I give Jay to make his hip more comfortable as he's walking back and forth up on the stage? But that's what I'm talking about. It makes life better today. So everything was going along, and I'm going to really cut to the chase here. Then along came COVID. I'd always been definitely a drinker, but I didn't drink any more or any less. Then came COVID, and then came a whole bunch of anxiety about how things were going to turn out, and business pressures and family pressures, and that led to anxiety. And of course, what would I do to help the anxiety? Well, I would drink wine. And it became readily apparent pretty quickly that I was actually pretty highly allergic to wine. And the outcome of that, the immune response triggers your stress response. And the stress response triggers inflammation. And what is that inflammation meant to do? Well, it's meant to trigger your immune response. So your immune response says, oh, I'm ready, what's coming? And what does that do? Well, that triggers your stress response. So you're on alert, you're ready. And what does that do? Well, it triggers inflammation, and around and around and around you go. And so the more I drank, the more anxious I got, and the more anxious I got, the more I drank. And I'm sure some people out there can relate to that. And so pretty soon shit hit the fan, and I had to do something about it. So I went through all the classic steps, and like I said, this is the Coles Notes version. But in the meantime, I also said, okay, Mr. Vitamin Man, what can you do for yourself? And so I did a lot of, in the process, did a lot of investigation, both for myself and my clients, about what things can actually help a body physically to deal with the tendencies and the urges to use substances. Through the whole process, I always found that rightfully so, there is a focus on mental processes and the underlying emotional reasons for them. And then when you get to the physical, the third leg of the stool, ever tried to sit on a stool with two legs? It's pretty wobbly. When it gets to the physical, it's just like, is physical important? Oh yeah, it is. Okay, well, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. And I realize that, it gets to be fairly complex. Well, I'm going to exercise, and I'm going to change my diet, and I'm going to make all these fantastic meals, and a lot of the time, and that makes it about as far as your intention, and a lot of the times doesn't happen. So I understood that a lot of the changes, if I was going to help somebody, had to be simple. They had to be straightforward, and they had to actually make a difference. So, you all good? Okay. So, I haven't had a drink now for 2 years, and so that's all good. And coming out of that, I really have been able to help some people with some different things. And we brought 3 of the most basic things today to focus on. And the first one, in your body, if you ever asked anybody, is water important for your body? They would say, well, obviously. Obviously, water's important. We have to hydrate adequately. Well, did you know that the second most ubiquitous substance in your body, found in every cell, goes right back to the beginning of evolution, is a molecule called glutathione? And it's just like, wow, that's a pretty foreign-sounding word. Well, it shouldn't be, because glutathione is found in every one of our cells, every mammal, not necessarily every life form on the planet, but every multicellular organism, and even some bacteria, right down to the very basics, where we were just a primordial soup. So one day, a small bacteria decided to invade a larger bacteria, and lo and behold, the larger bacteria found out, hey, this means I can use oxygen. And like you need oxygen for a match to burn? That little bacteria set up shop in the bigger bacteria, and the bigger bacteria said, oh, right on, now I can take in energy, I can store it, and because of this little thing in me, which turned into our mitochondria, I can burn it and produce energy. And but like a combustion engine, that process produces heat, right? And so in order to keep the engine running cool, you can't have an engine that runs without a coolant. along came, or what came into the picture was glutathione. And so I'm doing this again. 5 minutes left. Glutathione keeps your engines running cool. It is absolutely critical to energy production. What in our body requires energy? Everything. Detoxification. What's one of our most energy-dependent organs? Liver, brain. Your brain uses a whole bunch. And guess what goes on the blink when you are short of glutathione? Brain processes, liver processes, gut, kidney, you name it, because all your cells need it. What is particularly important is to get something that helps your own cells produce glutathione. You can take glutathione, and just by the way, last year when the forest fires were raging, and we had the smoke like we are today, had a client who said, yeah, I went in for a IV glutathione treatment to the naturopath, and they said, no, we're not giving them to anybody because we're saving them for the firefighters. Because glutathione is so critical. It is the ultimate lung rescue. And yes, I'm talking COVID as well, or cytokine storms as a result of getting a bug that is a vicious bug. So, keeping my eye, gotta get going. So for lung rescue and for smoke, glutathione is the way to do it. But again, we need it to be easy. So I found that glutathione is one of the only, if not the only supplement I can get my 19-year-old to take on an ongoing basis, because he just keeps it beside his bed, and when he wakes up, he takes 3 of them, and he's done. Helping your own cells produce it gives you much more of a 24-hour effect rather than taking it externally in a preformed version. And it helps you out for a while, but then it kind of disappears and the levels drop again. The other thing that is highly, highly important, and I would say this was certainly glutathione, but this was the other critical factor that helped me, and that is active forms of B vitamins. A lot of us in here might be familiar with a B complex or a stress tab, but most of those are not in their active forms. It means you have to convert them into their active forms after you take them. And if some of us, which we are genetically, are what are called poor methylators. Methylation is this extremely important thing that I won't get into. But, so just keep it simple. You want B vitamins, but yeah, if you're trying to offset addictive tendencies, you want the active forms of the B vitamins. So you're looking for an active form of the B complex. So what are we talking about? We're talking about one pill that can make a big difference. And the whole thing about, that's too good to be true. No, it's based on your basic biological function. It's the way your body works. And if you are a poor methylator and you're not taking in adequate methyl donors, like B vitamins, you're going to have problems. And just came up with a paper yesterday. By the way, with glutathione, you can find glutathione basically on anything. I brought a paper showing when glutathione is low, people have more anxiety. It was a study on college students. But with methylation, just came up with another study. These go on and on. But this is a fairly recent study showing that if you're a poor methylator and you are deficient, what they called alcohol use disorder is much more likely. Lastly, this is one of the most important overlooked aspects of health, period. Like I said, I've been at this now since 1988. And this is one of the things I see most commonly as a root of people's problems. And that is an immune system that tries to take care of the body with a blowtorch rather than with a scalpel. So is it exacting? Does it say, oh, here's the problem, let's cut it out? Or does it say, there's a problem, let's get it? And burn everything in your body with the inflammatory response in the process. And so having an overactive, poorly adjusted immune system can be very, very consequential. When you have an overactive immune response and you create inflammation because of it, well, what does that do? Just like we talked about already. Well, it triggers your stress response. And what does that do? Well, that triggers more inflammation. What does that do? Wakes up your immune system. And around and around and around you go. So one of the things I've been able to help my clients with, and myself, but especially my clients with, is a formula that helps simply calm your immune response and make it more efficient. Makes it more effective, but doesn't create and calms down the inflammation at the same time. So if you guys would like to know anything more, you can come to the table. And thanks very much. I really hope, among anything else, that you are somebody that you know will be able to benefit from this in short order. Today, next week. Like, make a difference. Thanks very much.